Labour productivity growth is recognised as one of the most important long-run determinants of GDP growth and improving living standards. The 2022 paper Why is Productivity Slowing Down by Goldwyn et al. Draws on empirical evidence to argue that labour productivity growth has been declining over the recent decades in frontier countries such as France, Germany, Japan, UK, and the US, and attempts at answering the question as to why the productivity is slowing down. They argue that while current low productivity growth may partially reflect a more normal growth rate for the economies, there are many factors that contribute more to the current slowdown. They make use of growth accounting to clarify the problem into parameters and find that most of the slowdown is due to a decrease in total factor productivity and reduction in capital deepening, with smaller contributions from labor composition.
The two decompositions of labor productivity growth identified as sources of growth and within between. Sources of growth decomposition separates labor productivity into an increase in inputs and a residual TFP. Within between is decomposition of labor productivity growth by industry. The manufacturing industry is one of the strongest contributors to the slowdown due to both its decline in productivity and its relatively large size. The premise of growth accounting is that the aggregate output grows either because more inputs are used or because they're used more efficiently. During our course, we have studied the Solow model and its equation for calculating the output using TFP, capital, and labor. This paper offers an extension of the growth accounting equation of the Solow model, which is based on mismeasurements, capital deepening, human capital, and TFP, which is split into trade and allocative efficiency and technology. The first term of this equation is mismeasurement, which is related to biases that can arise in deflators used to measure inflation and productivity, particularly in the context of emerging technologies and changing consumption patterns. These can result from issues with sampling, measuring prices, and aggregating low-level price changes into indices, as well as challenges in assessing quality change and accounting for new forms of commercialization. Healthcare is highlighted as an area where measuring quality changes is particularly important due to the secular rise in health expenses.
The weakness in investment, and thus the slowdown of capital deepening, is a major cause of the labor productivity slowdown, especially in Japan, where it contributes 80%, seen in the table. This aligns with what we learned on the course, that as capital deepening slows down, there will be relatively less capital and thus output, according to the Solow model, would decrease as it is a function of capital and labor, which are complementary in the production process. The value of labor would fall as the capital to labor ratio decreases. This decreases the marginal productivity of labor, which makes sense as the labor force does not have as much to aid them in the production process. Investment has declined not only due to cyclical reasons, but also structural reasons. This can be seen by, for example, in the US, there was a slowdown in investment in the 2000s before the crisis. It's estimated that approximately half of the slowdown of the contribution of capital deepening is due to the financial crisis and half is due to secular trends. The main financial friction caused by the financial crisis are credit frictions, which may have contributed to half of the 9.3% fall in UK labor productivity levels between 2008 and 2009. Weakening competition, a structural factor, doesn't only contribute to a decrease in investment due to lack of incentive, but also potentially a decrease in the accumulation of knowledge, as less investment is going towards developing, for example, the new technologies that would improve the productivity of labor. This could also negatively impact total factor productivity, and thus, according to the Solow model taught in the course, reduces output and consequently can be considered the factor causing labor productivity slowdown.
According to studies, there is a decrease in aggregate business dynamism due to declines within each market sector. There is a lower firm entry rate, firm exit rate, and job reallocation rate, as shown below in the graph. Another indicator of falling dynamism is the rate at which people change jobs. In the US, hires, separations, job flows, and job destruction have lessened since the late 1990s because of the decrease in single quarter jobs and compositional effects like an aging population. In our course, we also learned that compositional effects can affect the economy. We learned that more women, healthy people, and educated people can increase GDP per capita and develop the economy. There are also graphs from a lecture that show how 3 industrial sectors are affected when an economy develops. Employment and value added eventually decrease in agricultural and manufacturing sectors, while they increase in the services sector. Moreover, concentration metrics try to measure market power of a business. In America, from 1972 to 2014, concentration declined in the 1980s, reaching its lowest point in the mid-90s, then increases by 70%. For evidence, there's graph panel A, which is based on the cumulated sales weighted average change in an 8-firm concentration ratio, CR8. As we can see, concentration tends to increase over time. In addition, from using data based on the US Census, concentration increases are positively correlated to productivity. Markups are also an indication of productivity in models of oligopolistic competition, as they're positively correlated to concentration. They're defined by mu, which is price over marginal cost. For the US, clear evidence suggests that increase in aggregate markup is due to compositional effects. This is important because this finding makes it possible to decompose TFP growth into technology and allocative efficiency. Bakey and Farhi's model found that changes in allocative efficiency contributes to about half the growth of TFP. The model decomposes the distorted solar residual into technology and allocative efficiency. Moreover, the equation was used to create estimates. We then used them to compute the contribution of those two terms to the slowdown of TFP between two time periods for 3 markups. The table shows the results. However, there are problems with this table since more precise data could have been used in the calculation, and Bakey and Farhi's model calculates the distorted solar residual.
Global trade is another factor. The slowdown of global trade growth is primarily caused by weak consumer demand after the global financial crisis and is especially evident in countries most affected by the crisis. The collapse of investment also contributes to the slowdown in trade growth, as imports are more responsive to investment than changes in private consumption. Weak aggregate demand accounts for roughly half the gap between trend and realized import growth, concluding that structural components also played a role. The emergence of global value chains has led to a cheaper production, specialization, and knowledge diffusion. Trade and offshoring are components of GVCs and have had a significant impact on productivity, with exporting firms tending to be more productive and many of the most productive exporters engaging in offshoring. Offshoring services have also contributed to productivity growth and knowledge spillovers. Backward linkages are the amount of foreign value added embodied as intermediates in exports, a key variable capturing the integration of GVCs. From this table, we can see that growth in backward linkages was substantial in the years leading up to the crisis, 2006-2008. So the slowdown in backward linkages does not align directly with the slowdown in labor productivity growth starting in 2005. Although we can see that the majority of the countries here have had a decrease in backward linkages between the two periods, which is matched by a slowdown in labor productivity. When considering manufacturing industries only, the growth of backward linkages remains relatively stable, which implies tradable service industries have had a significant effect.
Technological change contributes to long-run aggregate labor productivity through innovation. Researchers find that R&D intensity as a share of GDP has remained relatively high. Still, there has been a shift in sources of funding in research fields, including increased government spending on the health sector, which may decrease TFP, as the health sector tends to have diminishing marginal returns. While research efforts may not have declined noticeably, lower research productivity can still result in lower innovation rates, requiring more researchers to maintain the same productivity growth. This could be linked to the cause, as when we studied the Romer model, we could see that the resource constraint tells us that there is a constant fraction of workers involved in research, which leaves the rest to produce output. If the fraction of those who produce output falls due to greater demand for researchers, total output in the economy will fall, given that stock of knowledge remains constant. Moreover, time lags in technology diffusion may also contribute to productivity slowdown. Finally, creative destruction requires greater capital depreciation rates to account for rapidly advancing technology. Still, it is difficult to capture data and reach a consensus on the contribution of technology towards the decline in TFP, as technological change might simply be less transformative than before.
Labor is an important factor as it is a significant part of the output equations and thus should play a large role in the slowdown of labor productivity. The supply of skills which would contribute towards changes in human capital and labor markets as measured in growth accounting databases is not a significant explanation for the labor productivity slowdown. This paper doesn't delve deep enough into the factors affecting the supply of skills, but offers potential reasons such as aging and new leisure technology. However, the paper didn't reach anywhere, as it stated that the aging was not accelerated evenly in the considered countries and that new leisure technology was under-researched.
In conclusion, while this paper has some limitations, such as lack of detail and factors affecting the supply of skills and unquantifiable results regarding the contribution to technology, it provides a clear overview to the potential reasons as to why labor productivity growth decreased from around 2% to less than 1%. While our group identified that the main reasons for the decline were fall in total productivity factor and reduction in capital deepening, it is also important to note that all above mentioned factors combined resulted in a reduction of productivity growth. The main factors we chose to focus on have a clear relationship to the output equations we highlighted and are justified by both qualitative reasoning and quantitatively through the estimated contribution of each factor to the slowdown of labor productivity seen in the table below.